In the quiet suburb of Norman, Oklahoma, a picture-perfect family's facade crumbled overnight. Helen Marquardt, a 42-year-old housewife and mother of triplets, was found dead in her bedroom, shot in the head. Her murder shocked the community, but the truth behind her death would prove even more devastating. As investigators peeled back the layers of Helen's life, they uncovered a web of secrets, manipulation, and forbidden desire that would forever change the lives of everyone involved. This case begins on a sunny morning in June 2022. Norman, Oklahoma, woke to the sound of sirens. Police cars raced down quiet streets, their destination a beautiful two-story home on Elm Street. Inside, a scene of horror awaited them. Helen Marquardt, lying dead on her bedroom floor, a bullet in her head and her secrets exposed. But who was Helen Marquardt? And what could have driven someone to commit such a brutal act? To understand this tragedy, we need to peel back the layers of a life that was far more complex than anyone realized. Helen Marquardt seemed to have it all. At 42, she was the picture-perfect suburban housewife. Her husband, Robert, was a successful corporate lawyer, known for his work with major oil companies. Their 3 children, 9-year-old triplets named Ryder, Rifle, and Ryan, were the pride of the neighborhood. Helen herself was heavily involved in the community, especially at her children's school and the local church. Norman, Oklahoma, with its population of just over 120,000, was the kind of place where everyone knew their neighbors. It was a city proud of its educational institutions, including the University of Oklahoma, and its strong sense of community. The Marquardts lived in a quiet, upper-middle-class neighborhood where block parties were common and neighbors looked out for each other. To the outside world, the Marquardts were the kind of family you'd see on a glossy magazine cover. They attended the First Baptist Church of Norman regularly, where Helen led a women's Bible study group. Their home was always immaculate, a testament to Helen's dedication as a homemaker. The children were well-behaved, excelling in school and extracurricular activities. Robert and Helen's marriage seemed strong, a partnership built on mutual respect and shared values. Helen was known for her kindness and warm personality. She volunteered at the local food bank, organized fundraisers for the school, and was always ready with a homemade casserole when a neighbor was in need. Her friends described her as the glue that held their social circle together, always there with a listening ear or a word of encouragement. But beneath this polished exterior, cracks were forming. Robert's demanding job kept him away from home for weeks at a time. When he was home, he was often preoccupied with work, his mind on legal loopholes and corporate strategies rather than his family. The couple's once strong bond had weakened, leaving Helen feeling lonely and unfulfilled. Robert's work, while lucrative, was not without controversy. He specialized in helping major oil companies find legal loopholes to drill for oil in developing countries. This often meant long trips to places like Nigeria, Venezuela, and Indonesia, where he would negotiate with local officials and navigate complex international laws. While Robert saw his work as necessary for America's energy independence, Helen struggled with the ethical implications of his career. As Helen's loneliness grew, she began to crave excitement, something to break the monotony of her everyday life. The perfect housewife facade began to feel like a prison. She longed for the passion and spontaneity of her youth, for a life beyond the confines of her roles as wife and mother. And in early 2022, she found that excitement in the most unexpected place: her 17-year-old neighbor, Taylor Ronsley. Taylor was everything Helen wasn't: young, carefree, full of life and potential. A senior at Norman High School, Taylor was known for her rebellious streak. She was popular among her peers, with a vibrant personality that drew people to her. But Taylor also had her struggles. Coming from a single-parent household, she often felt the pressure to grow up too quickly. What started as a friendly mentorship, with Helen teaching Taylor how to act like a good Christian lady, soon turned into something darker. Their relationship quickly escalated into a secret sexual affair, with Helen becoming increasingly obsessed with the young woman. For Helen, Taylor represented everything she felt she had lost over the years: youth, energy, passion. This affair became Helen's escape, a way to fill the void left by her crumbling marriage. But as with many secrets, this one would prove impossible to contain. The affair began innocently enough. Helen offered to tutor Taylor in preparation for her SATs. They would meet at the local library or at Helen's house when Robert was away on business. At first, their conversations were focused on academics and life advice. Helen saw herself as a mentor, guiding Taylor through the challenges of adolescence. But as the weeks passed, the nature of their relationship began to change. Helen found herself looking forward to their meetings with an intensity that both thrilled and frightened her. She began to notice things about Taylor, the way her eyes lit up when she laughed, the graceful curve of her neck, the youthful energy that seemed to radiate from her very being. For Taylor, Helen represented a different kind of freedom. Here was an adult who didn't judge her, who seemed to understand her in a way her own mother never could. Helen's attention made Taylor feel special, wanted, in a way she had never experienced before. Their first kiss happened on a rainy afternoon in April. They were in Helen's living room, ostensibly reviewing Taylor's college application essays. One moment they were laughing over a particularly awkward sentence, and the next, they were in each other's arms. That kiss opened a floodgate of emotions and desires that neither of them was prepared to handle. From that point on, their relationship became increasingly physical and increasingly secret. They would meet whenever they could find an opportunity. Stolen moments in Helen's car. Helen began to plan her entire life around these meetings, neglecting her other responsibilities and relationships. But as the affair deepened, so did Helen's obsession. She became possessive of Taylor, jealous of her interactions with her peers. Helen started to see Taylor as her lifeline, her only source of happiness in an otherwise unfulfilling life. This intensity began to frighten Taylor, who found herself feeling trapped in a situation she didn't know how to escape. In the days leading up to her death, Helen's behavior became more erratic. She withdrew from her usual activities and became possessive of Taylor. It was clear to those close to her that something was deeply wrong, but no one could have predicted the tragic end that was about to unfold. Helen's friends noticed the change in her behavior. She stopped attending her weekly book club meetings and withdrew from her volunteer work at the church. When they did see her, Helen seemed distracted and on edge. Her once immaculate home began to show signs of neglect. Unwashed dishes in the sink, laundry piling up, dust gathering on the shelves. Her children, too young to understand the complexities of adult relationships, sensed that something was off with their mother. Helen, once attentive and loving, now seemed distant and irritable. She would snap at them for minor infractions, then break down in tears, apologizing profusely. On the morning of June 5th, 2022, Robert Marquardt walked into his home after a long night at the office. The house was eerily quiet, unusual for a weekday morning when the kids would typically be getting ready for school. Robert called out for Helen, but there was no answer. As he climbed the stairs to their bedroom, a sense of unease began to settle in. What Robert found when he opened that bedroom door would haunt him for the rest of his life. Helen was lying on the floor, naked, surrounded by a pool of blood. She had been shot in the head. The room was in chaos. Furniture overturned, shards of broken glass scattered across the floor. It was clear that a violent struggle had taken place. Robert's frantic 911 call brought the police to the scene within minutes. As news of Helen's death spread, neighbors began to gather outside the Marquardt home, whispering to one another as they tried to make sense of what had happened. How could such a tragedy occur in their quiet, conservative suburb? The Norman Police Department quickly cordoned off the area, and Detective Dwayne Yoakum, a seasoned investigator known for her meticulous approach, was assigned to lead the case. As she surveyed the crime scene, Detective Yoakum knew this was no ordinary murder. The position of Helen's body, the state of the room, everything pointed to a crime of passion. Detective Yoakum, a 20-year veteran of the force, had seen her fair share of domestic violence cases. But there was something about this scene that didn't quite fit the typical pattern. The level of violence, the apparent struggle, it spoke of a deep-seated rage that went beyond the usual marital disputes she encountered. The investigation began with the most obvious suspect, Robert Marquardt. As Helen's husband, he was the natural first person of interest. During questioning, Robert appeared shocked and grief-stricken. He explained that he had been working late at his office in Oklahoma City, presenting time-stamped emails and phone records as proof of his whereabouts. While Robert's alibi seemed solid, the detectives couldn't ignore the possibility that his strained marriage could have provided a motive for murder. They noted his calm demeanor during questioning, wondering if it masked something darker. However, as the investigation progressed, it became clear that Robert was likely not involved in Helen's death. Robert's colleagues corroborated his story, confirming that he had been in a late-night meeting discussing a major upcoming case. His cell phone records showed that he had made several calls from his office throughout the night. While this didn't completely rule him out as a suspect, it significantly weakened the case against him. As the detectives dug deeper, they uncovered Helen's secret relationship with Taylor Ronsley. This revelation shifted the focus of the investigation dramatically. Taylor, at just 17 years old, suddenly became a key person of interest in the case. When brought in for questioning, Taylor was visibly nervous. She fidgeted with her hands and avoided eye contact with the detectives. At first, she was reluctant to say much, but as the questioning continued, she admitted to her affair with Helen. Taylor described how Helen had become increasingly possessive and erratic in the weeks leading up to her death. According to Taylor, Helen would often call her at all hours of the day, demanding her attention. She revealed that Helen had threatened to expose their relationship if Taylor tried to end it. These threats had caused Taylor a great deal of stress, and she admitted to feeling trapped and afraid. Taylor's confession painted a picture of a relationship that had spiraled out of control. She described how Helen would alternate between lavishing her with gifts and attention and flying into jealous rages if Taylor so much as spoke to another person her age. Helen had begun to show up uninvited at Taylor's school events, watching her from a distance with an intensity that frightened the teenager. When asked about her whereabouts on the night of the murder, Taylor claimed she had been at a friend's house studying for final exams. The detectives noted her alibi but remained skeptical. Taylor's connection to the victim and the nature of their relationship made her a prime suspect. But the investigation didn't stop there. The detectives also turned their attention to Karen Ronsley, Taylor's 42-year-old mother. Karen, a single mother who worked as a nurse at Norman Regional Hospital, had been friends with Helen for several years. However, their friendship had soured in recent months. During questioning, Karen revealed that she had confronted Helen about her suspicions regarding Helen's relationship with Taylor. The two women had a heated argument in Helen's driveway just days before the murder. Karen, protective of her daughter, had demanded that Helen stay away from Taylor. Karen described the confrontation in detail. She had noticed changes in Taylor's behavior: mood swings, secretiveness, unexplained absences. At first, she had attributed it to typical teenage angst. But then she had seen the way Helen looked at Taylor during a neighborhood barbecue, and something had clicked into place. The argument had been fierce. Karen accused Helen of taking advantage of Taylor, of manipulating and corrupting her. Helen, in turn, had lashed out, accusing Karen of being a neglectful mother who didn't understand her own daughter. The confrontation had ended with Karen threatening to go to the police if Helen didn't end whatever was going on with Taylor. While Karen had a solid alibi for the night of the murder, she had been working a night shift at the hospital. The detectives couldn't ignore the intensity of her argument with Helen. Could a mother's protective instinct have driven her to commit murder? As the investigation continued, the detectives found themselves at a standstill. They had three potential suspects: Robert, Taylor, and Karen, each with a possible motive, but no concrete evidence linking any of them to the crime. It seemed as though Helen's killer might escape justice. But then, on June 12, 2022, a breakthrough in the case emerged from an unexpected source. A technician at a local electronics repair shop called the police station with startling news. While working on a malfunctioning home security system, he had discovered several hidden video files stored within the system's memory. These files contained footage that had been recorded in the Marquardt home, specifically in the master bedroom where Helen's body had been found. The videos, dated over several months leading up to the murder, provided chilling evidence of Helen's secret life. The recordings revealed Helen engaging in a sexual relationship with Taylor Ronsley. What was more disturbing, however, was that it became clear Helen had been the one secretly filming their encounters, likely without Taylor's knowledge. The videos not only confirmed the illicit affair, but also showed the increasing tension between Helen and Taylor. In one of the final recordings, made just days before the murder, Helen could be heard threatening to expose their relationship if Taylor tried to leave her. The footage painted a picture of a relationship that had turned toxic, with Helen growing more possessive and Taylor appearing increasingly fearful. This new evidence was a turning point in the investigation. The detectives realized that Helen's murder wasn't just a crime of passion, it was the tragic result of a relationship that had spiraled out of control. The footage provided crucial insight into Taylor's state of mind leading up to the murder, suggesting that she may have acted out of fear and desperation. Armed with this new evidence, Detective Joachim and her team returned to the Marquardt home to search for the hidden cameras that had captured the footage. They found several small, discrete devices placed around the bedroom, further confirming Helen's role in recording the videos. The discovery of these hidden cameras shed new light on Helen's personality. It revealed a level of manipulation and control that went beyond what anyone had suspected. Helen, the perfect housewife and pillar of the community, had been leading a double life marked by obsession and deceit. With this damning evidence in hand, the detectives brought Taylor in for another round of questioning. This time, faced with the video evidence, Taylor broke down. Through tears, she confessed to killing Helen Marquardt. Taylor revealed that on the night of June 4th, she had gone to the Marquardt home to confront Helen about the recordings. The conversation quickly escalated into a heated argument. Helen, desperate to maintain control over Taylor, threatened to release the videos publicly if Taylor didn't comply with her demands. In a moment of panic and desperation, Taylor grabbed a gun from Helen's nightstand. She claimed she only meant to scare Helen, to make her delete the videos. But in the struggle that ensued, the gun went off. Helen was shot in the head, dying instantly. Terrified and in shock, Taylor fled the scene, leaving behind the chaotic crime scene that Robert would discover the next morning. She had been living with the guilt and fear of discovery ever since, her once bright future now forever altered by a single tragic moment. On June 14, 2022, just 9 days after Helen's murder, Taylor Ronsley was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. The news sent shockwaves through the Norman community. How could this promising young woman, just days away from her high school graduation, be capable of such a violent act? The arrest of Taylor Ronsley was a media sensation. Local news channels camped outside the Ronsley home, hoping to catch a glimpse of the teenager or her mother. The story quickly spread beyond Norman, making headlines across Oklahoma and even garnering national attention. The trial of Taylor Ronsley began in late November 2022, capturing the attention of the entire Norman community. The courtroom was packed each day, with spectators and media eager to hear every detail of the scandalous case. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Mark Peters, argued that Taylor had committed a premeditated murder. They painted a picture of a manipulative young woman who, when faced with the possibility of her secret affair being exposed, chose to end Helen's life rather than face the consequences. Peters, a seasoned prosecutor known for his aggressive courtroom tactics, presented a timeline of events leading up to the murder. He argued that Taylor's actions, going to the Marquardt home late at night, engaging in an argument with Helen, and ultimately using Helen's own gun against her, showed clear intent and premeditation. On the other side, Taylor's defense attorney, Lisa Greentroller, took a different approach. She argued that Taylor was a victim of Helen's emotional and psychological manipulation. Greentroller presented evidence from the hidden videos, showing how Helen had increasingly pressured and threatened Taylor, driving her to the brink of despair. The defense attorney, known for her compassionate approach to juvenile cases, painted a picture of Taylor as a vulnerable teenager who had been groomed and exploited by an adult in a position of trust. The defense contended that Taylor's actions, while tragic, were the result of intense fear and a sense of having no way out. They pleaded with the jury to consider the torment Taylor had endured in the months leading up to the murder. Greentroller argued that Taylor's age and the psychological manipulation she had experienced should be taken into account when determining her culpability. Expert witnesses were called by both sides. Psychologists testified about the effects of grooming and manipulation on adolescent minds. Forensic experts analyzed the crime scene evidence, offering conflicting interpretations of the struggle that had taken place in Helen's bedroom. The trial was emotionally charged, especially for Helen's family. Robert Marquardt, in particular, was visibly shaken as he heard testimony about his wife's secret life and the manipulative behavior she had displayed toward Taylor. On the stand, Robert spoke of his shock and disbelief, not only at losing his wife, but at discovering the extent of her deception. The Marquardt triplets, too young to fully understand the proceedings, were kept away from the trial, their lives now forever changed by the loss of their mother. Social workers testified about the impact of the events on the children, describing their confusion and emotional distress. Karen Ronsley also took the stand, providing tearful testimony about her confrontation with Helen and her fears for her daughter. Her account of Helen's threatening behavior added weight to the defense's argument that Taylor had acted out of fear rather than malice. As the trial progressed, it became clear that this case was about more than just a murder. It raised uncomfortable questions about power dynamics, the vulnerability of teenagers, and the hidden lives that can exist behind the facade of suburban perfection. After several days of testimony and arguments, the jury reached a verdict on November 29, 2022. Taylor Ronsley was found guilty of manslaughter, not murder. The jury, influenced by the evidence of Helen's manipulation and Taylor's psychological state, chose to convict her on a lesser charge. The judge, taking into account Taylor's age and the circumstances of the case, sentenced her to 10 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 5 years. The sentence was met with mixed reactions. Helen's family felt the punishment was too lenient, struggling to reconcile the woman they knew with the secret life that had led to her death. Meanwhile, some in the community sympathized with Taylor, recognizing the difficult circumstances that had driven her to commit the crime. The conclusion of the trial left many in Norman reflecting on the hidden struggles that can exist behind closed doors and the tragic consequences they can bring. In the aftermath, the lives of everyone involved were profoundly changed. Taylor Ronsley began serving her sentence at the Mabel Bassett Correctional Center, a women's prison in McLeod, Oklahoma. At just 18 years old, her life had taken a tragic turn. Inside prison, Taylor enrolled in counseling and educational programs, trying to rebuild her life from the ruins of what it had become. Her once bright future, full of promise, now seemed uncertain as she faced the consequences of her actions. Prison was a harsh adjustment for Taylor. Gone were the days of high school hallways and teenage dreams, replaced by the stark reality of life behind bars. She struggled with depression and anxiety, grappling with the weight of her actions and the life she had lost. However, with time and intensive therapy, Taylor began to confront the trauma of her relationship with Helen and to understand the complex factors that had led to that fateful night. Helen Marquardt's family struggled to move on from the tragedy that had torn their lives apart. Robert Marquardt, who had once been a successful corporate lawyer, found it difficult to return to his high-powered career. The revelation of his wife's secret affair and the circumstances surrounding her death had left him shattered. Robert took a leave of absence from his job, choosing instead to focus on raising his children. Ryder, Rafael, and Ryan, now 9 years old, had lost their mother in the most horrific way. Robert did his best to shield them from the details of the case, but the emotional scars ran deep. The children required extensive therapy to cope with their loss and the confusing, often contradictory information they gleaned about their mother. As the months passed, Robert found himself reevaluating his life choices. The long hours and frequent travel that had once seemed so important now felt hollow in the face of his family's needs. He eventually made the decision to leave corporate law altogether, choosing instead to work for a nonprofit organization focused on advocating for victims of domestic abuse and exploitation. Karen Ronsley, Taylor's mother, also faced an uphill battle. A dedicated nurse who had always worked long hours to provide for her daughter, Karen was consumed with guilt, wondering how she could have missed the signs of her daughter's distress. She continued to support Taylor throughout her incarceration, visiting her regularly and advocating for her early release. The strain of the trial and its aftermath took a toll on Karen's health. She struggled with insomnia and anxiety, often replaying the events in her mind, wondering if she could have done something differently to prevent the tragedy. Despite the challenges, Karen threw herself into advocacy work, speaking out about the dangers of grooming and the importance of open communication between parents and teenagers. The Norman community, once close-knit and conservative, was left in shock by the events that had unfolded in their quiet suburb. Helen Marquardt's death and the trial that followed became a cautionary tale, a reminder that even in the most seemingly perfect neighborhoods, dark secrets could be lurking beneath the surface. Friends and neighbors who had once admired the Marquardt family now look at their own lives, questioning what might be hidden behind their own closed doors. The case forced many to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature, desire, and the lengths people will go to protect their secrets. Local schools implemented new programs focused on healthy relationships and recognizing the signs of grooming and exploitation. Community forums were held to discuss issues of mental health, sexuality, and the pressures faced by both teenagers and adults in maintaining a perfect image. As life in Norman slowly returned to normal, the memory of Helen's tragic death and the trial that followed would never fully fade. It served as a grim reminder of the hidden pain and desperation that can lead to unimaginable consequences. This case leaves us with haunting questions. Could this tragedy have been prevented? Were there warning signs that everyone missed? And how well do we really know the people closest to us? The story of Helen Marquardt and Taylor Ronsley serves as a cautionary tale, urging us to look beyond the facade of perfection and recognize the hidden struggles of those around us. Perhaps by doing so, we can prevent future tragedies and create communities where secrets don't have to turn deadly. In the end, the quiet streets of Norman may have returned to normal, but the memory of what happened behind closed doors will linger for years to come. It's a stark reminder that sometimes the most dangerous threats aren't strangers lurking in the shadows, but the secrets we keep hidden in plain sight. As we reflect on this tragic story, let it serve as a call to action. Let us strive to create communities where open dialogue is encouraged, where mental health is prioritized, and where the pressure to maintain a perfect image doesn't drive individuals to desperate acts. Remember, in a world where appearances can be deceiving, it's more important than ever to reach out, to listen, and to support those around us. Because you never know what battles someone might be fighting behind closed doors. If you enjoyed this case, then make sure to check out our next one, Shown.